Years from now, people may be asked about what happened in Ferguson, and their versions of what happened may well be very different. And some historian or TV producer will have to figure out why, or at least they should try. Because history is complicated and it's easy to generalize and oversimplify, especially now in this age of social media. We face that as well, because when you ask people about the past in St. Louis, well, some people's pleasant moments were other people's harsh realities. For example, what do you see here? A swimming pool or a fence? Well, it depends on whether you are on the inside or the outside. And all too often, that's a part of St. Louis history that's hard to ignore. But let's start with the easy stuff. If you follow the 9 Network online, if you like our Facebook page, you've seen short videos. We call them Fact Fridays or Throwback Thursdays. And they're about all kinds of things about St. Louis, like building Corvettes. This one was about the days when Scott Air Force Base was an airship station. Some of the most popular posts are about the good old days, when downtown department stores had their elaborate Christmas windows. People really responded to this recent post about the SS Admiral and the days it cruised the Mississippi River to the sounds of a real calliope. And this one went viral. It went out on the anniversary of the opening of Six Flags. And what we didn't expect was that a lot of people who commented were sharing memories not of visiting, but of working there as teenagers during the summer. You just never know when you put these things out,
right,
whether they're going to take off or not take off.
No, you don't.
The 9 Network's community engagement manager, Molly Saunders, is in charge of getting these videos out on social media.
I always say that you cannot plan for something to go viral. It's clear that people love nostalgia. Our community clearly loves to share their memories.
Another popular post showed old movies of Forest Park Highlands, the amusement park where St. Louis Community College is now. The Highlands burned down in 1963, and most all of the comments on that post were about spending many pleasant days on the rides, in the picnic area, at the swimming pool, and what a loss it was for St. Louis. But here's the story that's hard to get into on a Facebook post, and we were well aware of this when we put it out. All the people in the pictures, they're white, because Forest Park Highlands, like a lot of St. Louis attractions, was segregated, not by law, just by practice. And by segregated, I don't mean one place for whites and one for blacks, just one place, whites only. That era was just coming to a close when the Highlands burned down. This is 1963. This is about the time. I wanted to talk about this, the challenge of balancing history and nostalgia, with the Missouri Historical Society's Gwen Moore, who curated the recent exhibit on St. Louis's civil rights history.
The city passed the Public Accommodations Bill in 1961, May of 1961, the state in 1965. So public places, and I know some organizations fought that. I know that the Admiral resisted that law. They didn't want to admit blacks, except on certain days.
Was that a legal thing to say, okay, we'll give the blacks Wednesday night?
It shouldn't have been after 1961. I mean, because we had a public accommodations law that made that kind of discrimination against the law.
You could say the Board of Aldermen made that happen, but black and white civil rights activists had been pushing, protesting, pressuring for years. In the 1940s, they started peaceful sit-ins at restaurants and lunch counters that refused to serve blacks, and for the most part, they did not change. Here was the argument from a lot of business owners. At least this is what they said. We would love to do this. We would love to have black customers, but our white customers will all leave and go to my competition.
Well, you know, it's really interesting because I've interviewed a lot of those core people, Committee on Racial Equality, who conducted their sit-ins the late 40s into the 50s. And they would say, when they would go in and sit in, they were not met with hostility. And they said they would ask people, are you against me sitting next to you and eating next to you? Because a lot of them, they did not leave when they sat in. And a lot of times they didn't. And the people said, no, we don't mind at all. So maybe some people would have, and maybe some people would not have. But I don't think that's the point. The point is...
But that was the argument.
That was an argument, but I'm not sure if it was based on anything in fact. I think it was maybe an excuse to avoid allowing black people to come in to an institution.
The 1954 Brown versus Board of Education decision brought an end to legally segregated schools, but it did not extend to local businesses. And Moore says the local movement was drawing younger protesters who were more aggressive. After the Public Accommodations Bill was passed, a 19-year-old African-American who the paper said had led sit-ins at bowling alleys and restaurants was arrested at Forest Park Highlands for blocking the entrance to the swimming pool after he was denied admission. That Forest Park Highlands is saying, can we keep the swimming pool white?
Yes. Swimming pools were always a contentious issue. I mean, that's what the whole Fairgrounds Park race riot was about. It's because the city had decided that they were going to integrate the swimming pools, the outdoor swimming pools. And that's very intimate, swimming with black people. I remember Sammy Davis Jr. told this story that he was performing in Las Vegas and jumped in the pool, and they drained the pool. So that was a really contentious issue. Of course, it was settled by 1950 that at least in the public pools you could not keep blacks out.
But here's the thing. Many St. Louisans were not welcome here, probably did not mourn the loss of the place. And yet others really did have a good time. Should they feel guilty about that?
I don't think you need to feel guilty about the fact that you went to Forest Park Highlands. Maybe you didn't even know that they had this policy. I kind of doubt it.
If you were a kid, kids really didn't know. They just went. I mean, very
absolutely,
often. Right?
Absolutely. And I get that a lot when I talk to African Americans who grew up during segregation. A lot of them weren't aware. They would tell me that, well, my parents protected me. My parents, we never left our community.
You know, I've heard people be nostalgic about the Ville.
Oh, absolutely.
And in a segregated community,
absolutely.
And think, boy, weren't those the days? Those were great days.
I hear it all the time. I hear it all the time from African Americans who grew up in segregated St. Louis. And so we didn't have a good idea. It wasn't until we got older that we realized that there was this segregation, that there was this racism, there was this discrimination. But as young children, it was just something that they were not really aware of. Yeah. So that's why it's so important to know what happened in the past. And I think the more people know about what happened in the past, the more they understand about what's going on now.
I mean, you see these parallels all the time, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't understand that there was racism and discrimination, you might not understand why we have so many disparities today. I mean, these disparities just didn't happen today. They're deeply rooted in the past, and we have to understand that.
So back to our Facebook post on the Highlands. We stated the facts: when it opened, how it grew, the rides, when it burned down, and decided to let the community make its comments. And most all of them focused on the nostalgia, not the difficult history.
I didn't see a whole lot of people saying that they were disappointed they weren't able to actually be there. But I do think that that would be an interesting conversation to have with them in the future. I mean, we don't shy away from tough subjects, and I think that that would be a very good conversation to have.
So I think it's important to tell the whole story. Even if it makes people uncomfortable, well, so be it.